to this computer. So thank you very much for joining us for another of our NATECLA Scotland YouTube interviews. I am delighted to be joined by Joy Vee and Joy Gillespie, who both currently work for the charity SOHTIS, I beg your pardon. And they're here today to share a little bit about themselves and the work that they do and the work that the charity does. So first of all, I'd like to find out about both of your backgrounds. Can you tell me what you've done in the past and how you've got to the position that you're in today?
Okay, I'll start. So I am Joy Vee, and actually I don't work for SOHTIS, so I volunteer for SOHTIS. I actually work full-time as an ESOL tutor for South Lanarkshire Council. And so that's where I spend my days, and then my evenings are often spent working on things with Joy for SOHTIS. So my involvement with the charity came about mainly through knowing Joy and hearing her talk about the charity and the passion that she had for that, but also then knowing that there was so much that as an ESOL tutor, so many skills that I had that could actually be useful in that situation, that it was almost wrong to stay quiet. And so, you know, we began to then look at working together and how those skills would work together.
Excellent, thank you. And yourself, Joy?
So my background, not ESOL at all. So I'm really grateful for Joy for all the skills and everything that she brings to SOHTIS. My background is third sector management. I've been involved in third sector work for many years, both in this country and overseas, in Asia and Africa, managing projects, and also here in Scotland. So yeah, I'm just passionate about bringing transformation into people's lives, and so yeah, I find myself at the moment managing this anti-human trafficking charity.
Thank you. So can I ask then, because Joy, I know that you were at the heart of the inception of this charity. Can I ask how you came to that point and how it came to fruition?
Yeah, well, the organisation is a relatively new organisation. It's been established about 2 years, just over 2 years. It was established by the co-founders, Sir Jack Stewart-Clark and Brigadier Hartness. And they spent a year researching human trafficking in Scotland to see whether there was actually something that they should be contributing, or an organisation they could put their weight behind. And following that year, they decided that there was a gap, that was really more services needed to recover and support victims of trafficking in Scotland. And at that point, they hired me, for some reason, to put what they wanted to see, their vision, into practice. So that was just about 2.5 years ago. That I took up post there, and I've just been developing that work and trying to learn about human trafficking in Scotland, what the reality is for people. It's a very hidden experience for most people that are trafficked, and really misunderstood as well for most part of the population. So there's been a lot of kind of learning on my part about what it is, and also just sort of bringing their vision of seeing that long-lasting support for people.
Sure.
Yeah, that's
excellent.
That's how I come to be a bit involved in it. Yeah.
Thank you. And for you, Joy, why do you think, or how does your ESOL skills help in this kind of field of work?
One of the things that we found when we began to look into the statistics of how many people are rescued out of human trafficking in Scotland, the figure for non-native English speakers was actually quite staggering. And we began to think about the communities that I work with, the communities that the non-English speaking communities in Scotland, and there are quite a few of them, but we began to look not only at how vulnerable they are, but also the strengths that they have, and how actually they are able to see things that we can't see. They're able to ask the questions that we can't ask. And actually, if we were to put into their hands the very skills they need to begin to help and to begin to raise awareness and to begin to empower people, then actually we could make more of a difference than if we went out ourselves and tried to find them. So we really began to look at how can we empower this whole community of people who in many ways start off feeling almost powerless because of their lack of English skills. Actually, they're bringing to the table a whole ability to see in a way that we can't. And so we were excited about how we could really empower and fire them up and give them the tools they need to be able to be part of the answer.
That's amazing.
I think that's, you know, Joyce put it really well, and that's part of what SOHTIS is all about. Is about creating those sort of creative communication channels and working with groups that are at risk of trafficking, but, you know, building resilience, but also giving them the message to take out to their own communities. And that message, when it's relayed by them within their own communities, be much more powerful than me trying to go out and relay that message. And so, and I think as well that ESOL, I mean, I didn't know too much about ESOL before I met Joy and I got involved in this part of the work, but the unique opportunity that ESOL teachers have and how the amount of information and knowledge and trust that they have with their learners is incredible compared to most other professions. You know, many other professionals only see their clients maybe once a month, once every few weeks or whatever for a very short time. But ESOL teachers have got an understanding of people's families, their living conditions, a whole range of things that no one else really is given that information. They're really privileged in that way. But also it's such a unique opportunity to be able to empower and also build resilience amongst people. So I think that ESOL community is such a really important one in this work.
I'm so pleased to hear some of the things that you've said, because it echoes how I feel about ESOL, about it being empowering, about these safe spaces that we create for our learners. I think there's two really elements that are at the heart of ESOL practice. So it's tremendous that those elements can be translated into this field that you're working in. Now, Joy Vee, I know that you actually worked on and you launched ESOL resource for, could you want to speak a little bit about that for me?
Yeah, so part of the work that we've done is we've launched, and we actually then relaunched it back in September of this year, a resource for ESOL tutors. So this covers everything that really you need to know by way of introduction into modern trafficking, modern slavery or human trafficking here in Scotland or in the UK if you're outside of Scotland. And how that would affect the ESOL classroom. So it includes basic definitions, but then it includes practical examples of what does that look like in my classroom. It also flags up a couple of the danger areas that we probably just haven't thought through properly, places, and looks then at how we can make our ESOL classroom more safe. We then have got several lesson plans, which are now in a separate area on the website because we've produced quite a lot of them. So there's lesson plans to help you, which you can just take and teach to help you raise awareness in your classes. So there was one particular one that I taught with a class. They were mainly Eastern Europeans. They'd been in the country for a long time. All of them were in work. And we showed them this. It was raising awareness and telling the stories, a video, and we used it in an ESOL way. So we'd stop and we'd discuss what was going on. We'd predict what would happen next and highlight the vocabulary. It was very ESOL-y kind of lesson. But what everyone was quite shocked as the video went on, and it started off as a story they identified with, and it gradually became darker and darker. And they began to say, I know a friend in that situation. And how do I help that friend? And suddenly as people, they left that classroom going, I know what to do now when I next talk to my friend who is in this situation. And that is exactly what we were looking for. So there is, in the updated version of the resource that we put up there, there's an article as well on teaching people affected by trauma in the classroom. I think all of us in our ESOL profession have come across people who are still being affected by past trauma. And it does come into the lesson. And so how do we deal with that as professionals? How do we, again, make it a safe space? How do I protect myself? And how do I make sure that I'm empowering my students? So that's what we've been working on to put together. It's been quite a piece of work, to be honest.
But it's an incredible piece of work, you know, as a practitioner, to come at a subject like this that I don't have an in-depth knowledge of. Your resource is invaluable, and we host it on our NATECLA Scotland website because I think the calibre of it is tremendous. You should be applauded for it, Joy, really should. It's great. Can I just move to the charity itself? Can you give me an overview of the kind of work and support that you offer?
Yeah, so really the work falls into two categories, and one category is what we've just been speaking about, sort of ESOL awareness raising, finding creative ways to raise awareness. So we do that through different means, and ESOL are one of the ways that we do that. The other part of the work is about recovering and supporting survivors of trafficking. So in Scotland, we're not very good at identifying trafficking. You know, there's few people are actually recovered from trafficking in comparison to what we believe are out there. And so we are working with third sector organisations, homelessness charities, statutory services to help them to identify trafficking and know how to deal with it when it arises. So for example, we run training courses and post-training support. So we go out to organisations and help them actually practically on the ground to identify trafficking. We help them to put strategies in place. So at a senior level, we'll help them to work their strategies through so that their staff are well supported and they're able to identify it. And then when people are identified, our programme support starts to walk with them and help them on that journey of, you know, what is next for them? What is the support that they're eligible to receive? How can they access that? Make sure that they're in it. And then as they exit that support, make sure that there's support in place for them long term, because recovering from a trafficking and exploitation situation, as you can imagine, doesn't happen in a matter of weeks or even months. It's a long term, you know, rebuilding of people's lives and empowering them to do that. So SOHTIS are here, we're here for the long haul. We're here to see lasting change in people's lives.
Excellent.
And really, I mean, it is a dark subject. It is, you know, there's so much awful about it, but actually we believe that there is hope. And, you know, our message is a message of hope that people can be recovered and that freedom is possible. And freedom isn't just being recovered from trafficking. Being recovered from an awful situation is wonderful. It's not just having that crisis care, but it is being able to live the rest of your life in freedom and have choice. And so that's really what our heartbeat is, if you like, or
I like that.
What our passion is.
Yeah, no, I think that's incredibly inspiring, and I'm sure people that watch this will think exactly the same. Can I just touch on a point you just made there? Why is Scotland bad at identifying victims of trafficking?
That's a good question. We don't have long to unpack it. So I think that across the UK, we're very much in the early stages of recognising what trafficking is. So we reckon that there's around 136,000 victims of trafficking at any one time in the UK. And in 2019, the 2020 data is not published yet. 2019, there was about 10,600 people recovered from trafficking across the UK. So that gives you an idea of the sort of, you know, how many people are still out there that are living in these horrendous situations. And in Scotland, at that point, there was about 512 people recovered. So even in proportion, it is less. I think that there's a lot of reasons. There's just that misunderstanding about what trafficking is. We do tend to think about it as being foreign nationals coming to the country. And there's definitely, I mean, over 90% of the people recovered in 2019 in Scotland were, as Joy said, non-native English speakers. However, as across the UK as a whole, the largest percentage of people recovered were British men. So in England, it was mostly big percentage of British people. So there's a whole section of people that we're failing to see here in Scotland. So there is that kind of misunderstanding about what trafficking, exploitation, we're not seeing it. We're just not good at, as the general public, each of us you know, at recognizing what we're seeing and doing something about it and acting on it.
Yeah.
And part of that is that, you know, the Scottish Government have got really good legislation in place.
Okay.
Their strategy on human trafficking and exploitation is recognised widely across Europe as being a good strategy. But we're very much in the early days of its implementation.
Okay.
It's only a few years in place. And so, you know, 3 years gone. So we're working on that and building with the partners that are here in the country in anti-trafficking and Police Scotland and Scottish Government to try and combat that. And
yeah.
So yeah,
it's a problem, as you say, when these things happen. If the legislation and the system isn't in place, it's difficult for you to, as you say, see people. I think it's a confidence thing as well. Sometimes, say, an ESOL teacher in a classroom, are you seeing something that isn't there? Are you over concerned? Are you too invested in your learners? That, I think that's a common guilt. But then also it's that problem. Well, what do you do if you suspect something? So what I would like to ask both of you, and please give me both of your perspectives, but if a colleague of mine suspected that they had a victim of human trafficking in their ESOL classroom, could you give them any advice?
Well, I go first. So I guess my advice is that depending on the circumstances of where you're working and what your remit is, I suppose you have to be careful around safeguarding and understanding what your safeguarding policy is for your organisation, that you're working within that, because that framework's there both to protect potential victims and to protect you as an individual. And it is serious organised crime for the most part, human trafficking. So we ought to be really careful how we deal with it. So definitely in terms of organisational, you know, having that kind of idea of your safeguarding, where are my safeguarding tools and where should I be going with that is certainly one element to that. I'm sure Joy's got something else to add.
Yeah, so what I would add is, as a member of the general public, or even, to be honest, in a COVID situation, you're far more likely to have someone say, I'm worried about my neighbour, you know, I'm worried about their situation, rather than them actually having the digital technology to be able to be included in an ESOL lesson. So what I would recommend is this here. This is the Unseen UK app. So this is produced by Modern Slavery Helpline. It's available for free on Google Store and Apple Play and whatever your favourite one is. And it is a way for you to report or to ask for advice from the central kind of people who deal with this all the time. So you can go on there and you can say, I'm concerned about somebody. You can report anonymously if you'd like. You can ask for someone to call you back. You can ask for information, you know, and also on that site. So when you open it up, there is loads and loads of information here that you can really use to educate yourself as well. So like you were saying, where you're saying, oh, is this, isn't it? Actually, if you spend a bit of time on that, you'll be able to discern, yeah, this is something that needs flagged, and you can ask them for advice. You can either call or you can drop in an email. And we actually have on the SOHTIS website, we have a lesson at an elementary level. So it is for low learners, even for low elementary, to teach them how to use that email part of the app. So how to keep themselves safe, so they keep off the, you know, they're not necessarily giving their personal details, but we teach them all the vocabulary they need and the scanning skills that they need to be able to get the information they want and to be able to report something that they're worried about. So that's it's amazing how much power that puts into the hands of someone with very, very little language.
Of course.
And that is the thing about what we have produced. We've deliberately produced resources that can be used from an A1 level, because there's a lot out there already at B1. But by the time, you know, B1, C1, but by the time you get up there, you know, you can ask for help. But what about those who can't ask for help?
I think
that is really where we've aimed our resources.
I think that's, I would really emphasise what Joyce said, that for ESOL teachers, if you have got concerns, as well as, you know, the safeguarding and reporting that you can do, one of the key things that you can do is make sure that your learners have that ability to report themselves, concerns that they have. And those lesson plans are so good at that, at making sure that you give them the vocabulary. They have that vocabulary for life then.
Yeah, of course.
You know, about who is a victim, what is a victim, you know, all of that kind of language that they need. And the things about, well, I think we speak about in the lessons something about, you know, how do you express if it's forced labor and you're having to work long hours? If you just say to someone, oh, I have to work really hard, that doesn't express, I mean, lots of people have to work hard and there's not anything wrong with that. But it's how do you express that there's actually a problem, and give them the tools, give them the English that they can raise awareness themselves. So yeah, I think that that's really key, the key thing about ESOL.
Excellent. Can I just say a huge thank you to both of you for giving up your time today and allowing us a small insight into the incredibly important and vital work that you do. Thank you so much for your time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.